All right, welcome. This is the first session of our series, Behind the Curtain. And what we're doing in this series is looking at different issues and subjects in church that we don't necessarily take the time to talk about a lot on a Sunday morning. But we really wanted to use this time that we have just to share and to help us understand, why we do certain things the way we do them and how we understand certain issues that are very practical, because these questions do come up a lot with people at church when they come in. How do you do this? How do you do that? And so we want to answer those questions. And so I've got Brett and Ron here, and we're going to talk through the issue of what we wear to church. If you've been here with us on a Sunday morning, you've noticed that we have kind of a casual culture. So we're going to start off, Ron, with talking a little bit just about kind of where church was and how things have been, and just kind of walk us through kind of your journey with that, because you've got a little bit different experience in church than a lot of us have. So what that formal versus informal attire looks like and how that's kind of played in your life.
Yeah. Well, to begin with, when I first started coming to church, it was a more formal atmosphere. It was here at the beach, but and my first experience was it was kind of casual. We were meeting in a little building, hadn't built a church. It was a startup church and everything, but for the most part, the ladies wore dresses and the guys wore suits and ties. And as we progressed, we built a building and we moved into the building, and then it even became more formal. It felt that way anyway, with suits and ties and dresses and that sort. And I was involved in the ministry side of it, so I was, of course, expected to look like that as well. And so that was the beginning of my church experience. But as time progressed and we moved to a different church, being this one, this is my second experience in church. Been here for a while, and this was definitely more casual, absolutely. And I remember one of the guys early on in the church, when we were meeting at the elementary school, one of the guys wore a tie to church, and jokingly, some folks that he knew actually cut his tie off and handed it to him. So,
oh my gosh.
So this was a casual atmosphere, to say the least. So it was all in fun, no harm intended or anything like that. So that's when my whole perspective changed on that, to become more casual and truthfully, it's a lot more relaxing to me to come to church and not be worried about, is my tie straight, or my jacket buttoned or anything like that, and can come and relax and enjoy the fellowship and the worship and the message and not bring attention to yourself. So that's kind of my perspective to date, is that's the way to handle it. But in all honesty, as far as being here at this church, we don't care what you wear. One of the fellas that I used to know years ago would say, "We don't care what you wear, just wear something."
Yeah, definitely. Please do that.
Yep. But that's a little bit of a stretch. But and I've heard it said that when you're coming, if you're going to meet a king, you wouldn't just wear jeans and a t-shirt. Well, we're not going to meet the king. We are children of the king. So that, to me, that speaks to me, because we have some liberties with our Lord and Savior, and He doesn't expect us to be stuffed shirts and do that. But as I said, if you feel comfortable wearing that, that's not a problem. That's
absolutely. So I had worked with a girl one time when I was in college, and she was from a very strict, I think it was actually Southern Baptist church, where if she left the house without her ankles covered by a dress, she couldn't pierce her ears or anything like that, or like her family would threaten to disown her if her ankles showed, because of how formal the church was. And that was there was this forced, if you're not dressed as well as you can be dressed and look like you're ready to go to a dinner where it's $500 a plate, you're not being respectful of Jesus, and you're not being, and I don't think that culturally, I think that's shifted a lot, but it just seems like a forced kind of a thing where you can't be yourself and come to Jesus, and I think that defeats the whole point of the gospel.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, absolutely. Did you want to share anything with just overall kind of formal versus informal and how that?
Yeah, well, I grew up dressing up really nice. I always remember my mom would put us in these little Sunday dresses, and my parents would dress up really nice too. So I definitely remember that. And I was actually looking it up. I think a lot of it has to do with our culture as well. Our culture tended to be a lot more formal back in the day, and it's become a lot more casual. So it's not just something that's apparent in the church, but in our society as well. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But I do appreciate the authenticity with kind of being able to wear what makes me feel comfortable and what I feel like represents me whenever I come to church. But like what you said, it's important for people to dress what they feel like is a good representation of their true selves. So if that is something formal, if that is a suit and tie, they should feel just as welcome as the person that wants to wear jeans and flip-flops. So I think that's important.
Yeah, just finding that balance of like, there's a difference between showing up in clothes that you're comfortable in, whether that's like a t-shirt. Because I had somebody comment on that when I did a sermon one time that said, "Oh, Sunday message and Friday attire," because I was wearing jeans, and I'm like, okay, that's fun. And so that's just like one of those unique criticisms that you get. But it's like, okay, there's a difference between dressing in a way that you're comfortable, and dressing in a way that kind of is who you are and it reflects your personality, and like showing up to church in pajamas and underwear. Like there's lines still, but I think understanding that there is a lot of room for people just to be in what they're comfortable in, and that's okay. That doesn't mean they're not being reverent towards Jesus. It doesn't mean they're not viewing God as a sovereign, righteous King who's deserving of our best. It means that we don't have to necessarily like wear a suit to believe that and to live that. So with that, I think one of the other issues that comes in kind of with how we dress, and not just the formal and versus informal, but also there's the questions around that come with like modesty and those issues and stuff. And so we live in a culture, that puts a lot more of that on women. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but I thought you might share with us a little bit just about how you understand that line and how you approach that issue of modesty and what's appropriate to wear versus not wear.
Yeah, growing up in the church and going to youth camps and everything, like they always had these rules, like your shorts couldn't be longer than your fingertips, and other things too. But, it does get kind of difficult because some girls have longer arms than others. Some girls have longer legs than others. So, it never really felt like there was, one rule fits everyone kind of thing. So over the years, I've kind of just looked at what worked for me, and I just try I always remember Proverbs 31, where it says she's clothed with strength and dignity. And I think it should be more, what's on the inside and where you stand with God in your relationship, and then you'll want to kind of dress your best for that. And I always think too, like how would I feel in my outfit if I ran into my grandmother? Because that might be, that might be something, if you're ever wondering, if you think too much about, is what I'm wearing okay, but like don't beat yourself up over it, because it's just so different for everyone. And at the end of the day, you don't want to be a distraction. You don't want to be taken away from, why you're at church. It's all about God and worshiping God, and you don't want to show up in like a sequin little number, right. Because it's like, who's, what am I trying to achieve? Whose attention am I trying to get? You don't want to be that distraction to other people, and you want to think about those around you. You want to create an environment where everyone's focusing towards God.
Yeah. Good. Well, and how would you, so one of I know because this issue comes up a lot, and we were talking about this earlier, but historically the church has put like the responsibility of the man struggling with lust or sexual temptation, they've put that on the woman. Mm-hmm. So it's like it's the woman's job to dress in such a way as to not get cause any man to stumble. And it's like, at what point is that a fair assessment, and what in your mind, and at what point is it sort of like, okay, like eventually you're gonna have to learn to not be a junior high boy and keep your eyes where they belong, because this is your battle, not my responsibility. Now we do have biblically, don't cause your brother to stumble. There is a balance that we all have to take responsibility for not fueling the problem unnecessarily. But where would you kind of, I guess, in your view, draw that line of, okay, this is where how far I can go, but beyond there it's a bit, you're making his problem my problem.
Yeah, that is hard. And I know, Justin had made a good point when we were talking about this earlier, that generally you want to look at whoever's the most spiritually mature. I think that's a good way to look at it. If you're around men who are like newer to the faith, you want to be responsible for what they're learning and what they're being exposed to as well. Like, you don't want to be a distraction, but at the same time, if you're around men who are not like new in the faith, but like, they should know better, I don't know if that's a good way. But, and at the same time, you know, like I've learned in my years, you know, because I grew up in a society where it was on us to kind of not present ourselves in a way to make our brother stumble, and it was all on us. But like they didn't have to, you know, wear t-shirts to the beach. I mean, they could go shirtless, you know. And it was like, well, that doesn't seem super fair, because that can cause women to stumble too. But I've discovered that, you know, it doesn't always even matter what I'm wearing. I could be wearing baggy clothes and not have makeup on and still like get hit on. So it's like, you know, sometimes you just don't really, there's just not a one answer fits all kind of thing for this. You kind of have to take it case by case and just, you know, really looking at yourself and in your heart and
No, I think that's a really good point,
up,
because
yeah.
it's like as we mature, like, and so because there's a difference. I had a good friend in high school who I tried to get to come to church for years, and finally I remember one night I got her to come to a student service. And I was really excited because it was a student ministry that really changed my life and really just welcomed me and brought me out of my depression and stuff like that. So I was like, man, if you come to this, you're going to fall in love with Jesus, and this is going to change your life. And she had the curse of being a very attractive girl. And so she came wearing clothes that were very normal for her. And all of the youth group girls pulled away, because I mean, a lot of it was jealousy, but that they pulled away and they were talking about how inappropriate her clothes were, and she felt very judged and criticized, and so she never went back. And it was because she was not a Christian. They were holding her to this modesty standard that they held, which is, I think that's where you get into trouble, is you have to acknowledge, like, okay, there's going to be people, and this is where the responsibility's on the guy. You've got to dress you've got to know how to control your eyes. As you mature, you've got to get better at controlling your eyes, because there's going to be immature girls who aren't going to be dressed as modestly as maybe we would all consider reasonable. But as a girl matures, the idea would be that her desire to not unintentionally cause a stumble might affect how she dresses. But also as the guy matures, so there's that standard of recognizing where everybody's coming from and adapting that while being understanding and non-judgmental towards each other, because we do want to be a place where you can come as you're comfortable and come as you are. But when I was reading through his 1 Timothy 2, 9 and 10 talks about, you know, women need to dress respectfully and modestly. And a lot of times I think because of essentially cultural pieces and things like that, we've put all that responsibility on women. I think honestly that practice could be adapted, and that the principle of that text could be applied to everyone. And saying how you dress needs to be in a way that does not distract from Jesus. It doesn't necessarily mean it's sexual in how you dress, because honestly you have like big old earrings or necklaces, or a guy's got like crazy color things that he's wearing, or even like, okay, you're not wearing sleeves on your shirt, or that, not that any of those things are necessarily wrong, but why are they there, and are they detracting people's attention away from Jesus? Because that's, I think, the point. You talk about it like with sequins. Like you could have everything fully covered with sequins, but it could still be a huge distraction because you're drawing attention towards yourself with how you dress. I wrestled with this when I was when I first started preaching. I preached without shoes on. Because it was a message I did, you know, looking at Moses in the burning bush, take your shoes off, because we were standing on holy ground. So I had all these like symbols for why I did it, and it took me years to process. Like every week, people were talking about my shoes or my lack of shoes, and it became what I realized, and why I stopped doing it was a distraction from the gospel. It was not wrong. There was something sinful about not wearing shoes, but I was drawing attention to something of me rather than putting attention on the gospel. And I think that's what all of this ultimately comes down to. And as we mature, we want to do less and less to put attention on ourselves and more to put attention on Jesus in everything. And so whether it's what you're wearing or how you're wearing it or all that kind of stuff, I think that ultimately is how we balance all that together, is focus it on Jesus. So, all right.
Very good.
Well, thank you guys for coming out. Thank you for joining us for our first Behind the Curtain. We look forward to seeing you again soon.